On this episode of Humble History, we're going to cover the myths and beliefs around the Egyptian god of the dead and mummification, Anpu. Let's get into it right now. Anpu was popular throughout all the dynasties of ancient Egypt and was often depicted either as a man with the head of a jackal or simply as a jackal. And he was worshipped as the patron god of mummification. Mummification was the ancient process of preparing a deceased body for the afterlife. Although it was a very common practice, the Egyptians left us very little description of the mummification process. However, what we do know is that Egyptian priests would wear jackal masks throughout the entire process to honor Anpu. Some historians argue that Anpu's jackal-like features were an association made by the Egyptians because of the occurrence of jackals eating corpses that were not mummified, and that perhaps this is what led to mummification in the first place. Regardless, the Egyptians believed that Anpu's function extended beyond the physical world and continued into the afterlife. They believed that Anpu would guide souls into the Hall of Double Truths, where they would be judged in front of a trial of 42 gods. In this trial, Anpu was responsible for measuring the scales called the Tongue of Great Balance. The trial was simple. On one side of the scale, Anpu would place the heart of the soul that was being judged, and on the other side, he would place the feather of Ma'at, the Egyptian concept of order and goodness. If the human heart was lighter than the feather, then the dead were permitted to go into the afterlife, called the Duat. But if the human heart was heavier than the feather, then the dead were consumed by Amut, whose name literally means the devourer of souls. Anpu did not only take care of dead humans, but he was also responsible for dying gods. In one of the most important stories of Egyptian mythology, after the king god Osar is killed by his brother, Seth, the god of mischief, Anpu arrives to mummify Osar's body. And it was this mummification that allowed the other gods to eventually resurrect Osar. The story is very important to Egyptians because it does two things. One, after Osar's resurrection, he becomes the god of the afterlife, which was one of the key mythological aspects of how ancient Egyptians understood or made sense of their world. And two, it placed Anpu as mummifier and guardian of dead humans and dead gods. And in the same story, Anpu was the one who detected how Seth approached the dead body of Osar. At this point, Seth had taken on the shape of a leopard. Anpu, after discovering Seth, seizes him and brands his body with hot iron. This is how the Egyptians explained why leopards have spots. But more than that, Anpu flayed Seth's body and wore his skin to ward off all of his followers. And it was after this moment Anpu was responsible for fetching the hearts of the followers of Seth. In the period of Greek occupation of Egypt, Anpu's name became Hellenized to Anubis. Later, the Greeks associated him with their own god Hermes, and the name Hermanubis emerged. Past the Greeks into the Roman occupation of Egypt, the Romans associated Anpu with necromancy, or magic relating to the dead. This associated Anpu with demonic elements, with the belief that his followers can summon him to enforce curses on others. And this association exists in horror films to this day. However, it is important to state that even though Anpu's jackal appearance can make him appear to be menacing, the Egyptians believed that he acted as a benign mediator for humans as they venture into the afterlife. And aside from his job helping the dead, Anpu was also the patron god of the lost, the wandering, and orphans. If you want to learn more about Anpu and Egyptian mythology in general, we recommend the books The Encyclopedia of African Religions by Mummification Asante and Amamazama. Also recommend The Handbook of Egyptian Mythology by Geraldine Pinch. And finally, we recommend Ancient Egyptian Myths and Legends by Louis Spence. The links for all the books are listed in the description below. I've been your host, Adam Salu, and if you want more content on African history and African mythology, subscribe to the channel to get free content every week. And I'll see you on the next episode of Humble History.